Okay. So before we get into class number 2, a updated grading. There's a little change here. I told you last week that I might make a change. And the change is that I've taken out 5% from here. This used to be 30. Taken out 5% from here. This used to be 30. And now we have this new thing called class participation. Everything that you do in class, answering questions, some of these exercises, and also your participation in the WhatsApp group, doing the recordings, anything you might be asked to do within the WhatsApp group, all that counts to 10% of the grade. So it's not trivial. Please participate. So we have, just to clarify, 25% for assignments, 20% for quizzes, 20% for midterm, 10% class participation, and now 25% final. So lots of activity. The goal is to keep you engaged. Okay, with the assumption now that we all are familiar with the alphabet. Just a second. How do I clear? Oh, this is a annotation here. There we go. I shouldn't do that. Okay. With the assumption that we are all now familiar with the alphabet, we are now going to look at what are called first declension nouns. First declension nouns. And for some of you, this is brand new, right? You've never heard the first two terms. You may know what's a noun, but what is this first? What is a declension? Let me very quickly explain that. So going back to this idea of the grammar translate method, where we try to learn the language by looking at grammatical constructs. How do we now recognize words and their meaning in a new language? That's the effort, right? And in grammar, there is this thing called parts of speech. So when you have a sentence, each word in a sentence has a specific function, right? There are some words which denote actions. And those words are called verbs. They have a specific function in a sentence. They try to capture what's the action that's happening. One of the categories of words in a sentence are nouns. Can anybody give a informal definition of a noun? What's a noun?
Naming word.
Please say that one more time.
Naming word.
A naming word? Okay. Any other definition?
Naming words of person, place, animals, and things.
Some person,
Place, animals.
or an animal, or a thing, right? Any other word? Any other definition of what a noun is?
It can play the role of subject.
Yes, they could play the role of a subject. And we'll look at what this subject is. They could also play the role of a object, right? So a noun, very informally, is a word which captures the person or the place or some sort of a thing, right? That's a noun. Now, when we are learning this new language, and we're not in that culture where we can somehow intuitively understand what function this noun is doing, How do we recognize then the function of a particular noun? So what grammarians do is they, let me clear this out. I should figure this out. Oh, like that. Clear my triangle. Okay. So what grammarians do is they recognize patterns in nouns. So they look at the language, and grammarians will see there are a set of nouns that all seem to follow a certain pattern. And they take those group of nouns and they put it into a category. So that now when they want to teach students about learning this new language, they will say, hey, why don't, instead of learning individual thousands of nouns and seeing, each noun, how it's functioning, it turns out that there's a pattern actually for a set of nouns. And if you can understand that pattern, it turns out that there's all these nouns within this group. Let's call it group 1. All the nouns within this group 1 are all functioning in the same way. So you see how now grammarians find an easy way to teach us how to recognize a noun using this pattern. And because the noun is functioning the same way within this group, you will recognize the pattern, and using that, you will know what is its function, what it's doing in the sentence. So as we study nouns in Biblical Greek, we are going to look at groups of these nouns that grammarians have identified. And obviously, when you're looking at these patterns, the patterns are not going to be perfect. That every noun in this group will behave exactly the same way. But the grouping is big enough that, or general enough that exceptions, you can, look at the exceptions separately. But since 90, 95, or sometimes even 99% of the nouns behave the same way, you recognize the pattern, you know what the noun does. So now the task becomes, how do you recognize the pattern? And in Greek, in Biblical Greek, the pattern is the way nouns end. And the technical term for this is a declension, the ending. Grammarians have seen that the way nouns decline or the way nouns end is defining the pattern for us. That's why it's called, the set is called declension, right? And so grammarians have found 3 sets of nouns. That's all. We don't have to learn 10, 15 set of patterns. There are only 3 sets of nouns. The first set is called the first declension. First declension nouns. So when the lesson says first declension nouns, first means this is the first set. Nothing more than that. First set of nouns. And these are nouns. That's also clear for us. And the word declension is telling us that all the nouns, or at least most of the nouns in this first set, all decline or end. So if you look at the noun, the ending of the noun is all the same way. So for us now to learn this set of nouns and how they function, we really need to know this ending, the declension. We need to learn this declension. This part may change for different nouns, but this doesn't change. And now the technical term for this is a stem. It doesn't change. This is the ending. So you learn the ending, you know one set of nouns. So with that as the introduction, we go back to our lesson. First declension, nouns. Now, before we look at this declensions, the endings, nouns in Greek have three aspects. Three aspects. The first aspect is nouns have number. Every single one of Greek nouns, every single Greek noun has number associated to it. And this is easy for us to understand because even English nouns have this. What is number? Just a second. Okay. Number is either singular or plural. There are two varieties or two categories of numbers. You can either have singular nouns or plural nouns. Even in English, we have the same thing, right? You could have in English, in English, whenever you have the added ending, even here you see it's a declension, right? It's an ending. Whenever you have S or ES, it shows that it's plural. What's the example here? Boy, plural is boys. Box, plural is boxes, right? In Greek, though, it's not this simple. It's not just adding an S at the end to make it plural. There's little more complexity to it, but the idea is the same. That there is a certain ending. The ending tells you whether it's a singular noun, meaning there's one entity of that noun, or the ending tells you whether it's a plural noun, meaning that there are more than one of it. Now, you know, there are some languages where there's a third category of number, which is dual, right? One, two, and then plural. In Greek, it's just two, either singular or plural. Okay. Next. So here's the way it works in Greek, right? And this is why you've got to be able to read seamlessly, because you see here the word phone, which means voice, is singular. You see the ending here is an eta. Eta is telling us that it's a singular noun, it's just voice. But phonai, see the ending? There's phone, here also there's phone. Just the ending has changed in this first category of nouns. And now instead of voice, it's voices, plural. Cardia, the alpha ending is telling us that it is a singular heart. Cardii, the I ending, is telling us that it is plural. Singular or plural. Every noun, it could be either singular or plural. Nouns in Greek also have gender. Every noun has gender. How about in English? We have the same thing. Host is the noun. It's always masculine. Hostess is feminine. Steward, masculine. Stewardess, feminine. How does it work in Greek. There are three nouns in Greek. There are three genders in Greek. In Greek, there is the masculine gender, there is the feminine gender, just like English, but there is also neuter gender. Masculine, feminine, and neuter. Every single noun in Greek will be either masculine or feminine or neuter. This gender is no way connected to the gender of people, right? So when we say some noun is feminine in Greek, it doesn't mean that it's a woman. It has nothing to do with human gender. These are just grammatical categories. So whenever we say a certain noun is masculine or feminine or neuter, only think of them as grammatical categories. They have nothing to do with human gender, or actually biological gender, right? Three categories of gender in Greek. Next, there's a third aspect in Greek, which is called case. Case. Now this gets slightly complex, slightly rich, right? Number is very singular. Very simple. Number is either singular or plural. Gender, three categories: masculine, feminine, neuter. So never say male, female, and neuter. If you say a certain noun is male, you're saying it wrong. It's not male. A noun is masculine, or a noun is feminine, or a noun is neuter. Please make note of that. Okay, so this was simple. Number, gender. Now, how about case? Let's get into that. Case in English. So what is case? Case is the function of the noun in the sentence. For example, we just referred to subject. That is a function of a noun. So for example, if we say some name, right? If we say Arthur threw the ball, what is the subject of this sentence? Subject.
Arthur.
Arthur.
Because he threw.
Arthur is the subject of the sentence. What do we mean by subject? The subject is the noun that is performing the action. Here the action is through. What is the noun which has performed the action? Arthur. Right? And what is the noun which had the action performed on it? The ball. This is the object that received the action, throwing. Right? Now in English, how do you know which word is the subject who is doing the action? Which word is the object which is receiving the action? That is determined by word order. Yeah? The moment you read the sentence, Arthur threw the ball, our mind Just because Arthur is at the beginning, when we say word order, we are saying which is at the beginning of the sentence. Rather, to say it more precisely, what word is before the verb, before the action? That word is the subject. So the position of a word, the position of a noun in the sentence determines the case or the function of the noun, right? That's how it works in English. This is the example. The apostle rebuked the demon. Here the apostle, subject, rebuked, action or verb, demon, object. The subject, the apostle, is doing the action, rebuking. The demon is the object which is receiving the action, rebuking, right? Now, if you flipped the word order, if you say the demon rebuked the apostle, then the demon becomes the subject, the apostle becomes the object, just because of where it is positioned in the sentence. That's how English works. Word order defines how the nouns are functioning. Sometimes in English, personal pronouns, additional words, define the case. Example. When we say I, this personal pronoun I defines that it is the subject. You can never have this word I anywhere else in the sentence but at the beginning, right? You cannot say the ball through the eye. You can't do that, right? I, by definition, wherever it is in the sentence, that is the subject. So a personal pronoun sometimes defines the subject. This word my in the singular, another personal pronoun, defines that this noun is showing possession. So for example, I lost the screen here. Back, okay. For example, if I say, I have to redo this just a second. Stop share. Oops. Well, looks like that's the recording. Okay. So personal pronouns show the case, the function of a particular noun. For example, this word my, another personal pronoun. I can say, I gave my coat to my friend, right? My coat. This word my, a personal pronoun, is showing that the coat, which is a noun, belongs to me. It's my possession. Personal pronouns can indicate possession, right? And some other ways, this word to or for can also indicate that there is an indirect object. What's an example? Let's go back to Arthur, threw the ball. This was a simple sentence. Arthur is the subject, threw is the verb, the ball is the direct object. the direct object which is receiving the action, Arthur threw the ball to, right, to some, I can't think of any names, to some name, John, right? Indirect object. Indirect object. Why? Because John is not receiving directly the action. Ball is receiving directly the action. Arthur threw the ball, but John is indirectly receiving the action through the ball. This is called the indirect object. Indirect object. So there are other personal pronouns, to and for, other words, which indicate indirect object. So I realize we've already touched time. Let us take a pause at this point, and we will look in the next class of how Greek represents case or function in the next class. But just to review, all Greek nouns have number, which could be either singular or plural. They have gender, which can be either masculine, feminine, or neuter. And they have case. And what are the different categories of case and how New Testament Greek represents it, Koine Greek represents it? We'll look at it in the next class. So let me stop the... Did it stop already? Stop share.